Hello, everybody. Welcome to Player 2 Press Start. I am killagreg. You can find me at killagreg17.
And I'm Dan. You can find me at the Polygon 1.
And joining us today, very special guest, Alex Krasny. Why don't you say hello?
Hey guys, I'm Alex. I follow me on Twitter at Lex Krasny on Twitter, and follow me on my website agreeordie.com.
And you can find Dan and I on Twitter at Player2, PLAYRTWO. So today, you may remember Alex from our Beat 'em Ups Part 2 episode, where he showered us with insight on the Beat 'em Up history and some suggestions and stuff. He was our expert for the Beat 'em Ups, and now he's going to be back to be our expert on Mass Effect. So, thank you. Thank you for joining us.
I just want to plug Alex's, I know he mentioned his website, but his podcast is terrific. It's Alex and his friend Yuri, and they are very funny, and I highly recommend you go check them out on YouTube, YouTube and iTunes.
Thanks, Dan.
Sure. But seriously, though, you're like my favorite podcast now. So there's I had a bunch of others I listened to, and they're all like secondary at this point.
That's awesome to hear. I'll tell Yuri too.
Excellent.
So we were gathered here today to talk about Mass Effect, the best game.
The game?
I'll say that. I'll say it's the best
Really?
game.
Even out of all three Mass Effects, this is the first one still your favorite?
Definitely for my favorite. Although
Really?
I treat them all as kind of one game, but if I had to rank them, this would still be number one.
You treat them all as one game, really?
Yeah,
I specifically didn't want to talk about it, and now we're going to jump right into it.
Well, no, we'll just talk about the
different.
first one, but as far as how I see it, it's just the series as a whole is like one thing to take in.
I suppose that makes sense.
I kind of have that experience as well, because I'm all like 6 months I played all three games, and so they definitely run together for me.
Mm-hmm.
That's an intro. Why don't you talk about that, Dan? Because that's a unique perspective. Most people played it, with between 2 and 3 years in between each installment, but you were pretty late to the Xbox game, so you played them all in rapid succession.
I really was lazy about getting a 360, and then I got one towards the middle to end of 2010. It had already been out for a number of years at that point, right? I don't remember what year it launched. I want to say like 2006 or 7, something like that.
I believe it was 2007.
Yeah. So it was out, and I did. And Mass Effect was this game I'd lusted over, but I had no opportunity to play it. So then I finally did get one, and then I borrowed Mass Effect 1 and 2 from you, correct?
Yeah.
I think that's what happened. And so I started the first one. I struggled a little bit. I set it aside for 6 months. And then I said, you know what? I'm going to get through this. And I finished the first one, and then a couple months went by, and I was like, holy shit, the third one's coming out soon. So I had to get the second one. I had to crank away at that second one to get through it in time to be prepared for the third one. So it was in pretty quick succession from each one to the next.
Go ahead, Alex.
Oh, that must have been an interesting perspective because, I had them all right when they came out, and I had to wait a year before the next one came out, and that the gap in time that goes by from game to game, I think actually serves a lot to the game, and how the rebirth of Shepard and 2 and the time gap that you have in your mind. I don't know how you experienced it in Fast Forward, but that was a really different experience that other people had.
No, I definitely agree. I think that's a good point because it was there was no time difference at all. It was I finished the one game and pretty much started the next, and there was no break. And so it's kind of how there's multiple years, but there's 3 years or something between Star Wars and The Empire Strikes Back in their storyline. But if you just watch them, you don't really get that sense of time difference. But it's there, and you don't really pick up on it unless you're aware of it.
That gap provided me a very interesting experience. When I played the first Mass Effect, I played it as a renegade. That's just how I played all those types of games. I was always just a big jerk to everybody. And I don't know I don't know what changed, but I guess something in my life changed between Mass Effect 1 and 2, so that when I started playing 2, I was playing it as a Paragon because that's just how I naturally felt like I should be playing Shepard at that point. But I had forgotten all of the Renegade choices I made, um, which by the time 3 rolls around definitely led to some interesting interactions I had with people because I punched them in the face in the first one, and then they came to me in 3, and I'm like, oh, I'm really sorry about that. But because of that gap, I had forgotten a lot of the decisions I made, so they came as a real shock when they came back to bite me in the ass later.
I didn't really have I had a gap because I waited for the game, but I just played the game over and over again back to back the entire time that I had it until 2 came out. So I probably beat it like 5 times in a row before I played 2, so I came off it fresh, but at the same time, like, the story's the same. So, like, the way it played out was the same to me. So I still had to wait, that time to have Shepard come back. So I felt kind of both ways. Like, I never forgot anything because I knew that game inside and out by the time 2 came out. Did so many times.
That's extreme. 5 times? What is that, like 250 hours?
It got faster every time I did it, but yeah, toward the end, I like never did the Mako parts anymore. It's like, I know what's on this planet, so I just kind of ignored them and started rushing it. But I did want to just play every class is really what it was about because they played so, different. Well, kind of different. They don't really play that different, actually, in Mass Effect 1, but I wanted to experience them all anyway.
So, did you guys have any experience with BioWare games in the past, like KOTOR or Knights of the Old Republic and, Baldur's Gate? Did they do any other notable things that I don't know about?
I'm not sure what else they did other than those. I did play Baldur's Gate before. That was like my first kind of RPG that I've only played at my friend's house. Other than Fallout, Baldur's Gate was the only RPG that I've ever really played on a, of that style, I guess. I played Final Fantasy games, but they're different because there's no real role-playing in those games. In Baldur's Gate, you actually make decisions, and I thought the game was just super great and awesome. And then later, Knights of the Old Republic came out, and I had no idea the same company made those. And I was obsessed with Knights of the Old Republic. Obsessed.
Join a club. Because man, that was a great game. That's one of the few games that I've actually played through multiple times. I mean, I've only played through all the Mass Effect games once. I've thought about going back before, but man, those Mako missions are not my favorite. But Knights of the Old Republic, I've played through like 2 or 3 times.
I played Knights of the Old Republic, and I really loved it. I know BioWare technically didn't make Knights of the Old Republic 2. But if you ignore the really rushed crap end of Knights of the Old Republic 2, I really love that game as well. Never played Baldur's Gate, and I'm playing Dragon Age Inquisition right now, and I'm having a ball with that. So I would say BioWare has a pretty good pedigree to them.
Yeah, they're definitely professional RPG makers. They've been doing that for a long time.
Yeah, that is essentially the only thing they did. I pulled up their Wikipedia, and other than MDK2, all they've ever done is RPGs. They even made the Sonic RPG for the DS. No, don't make that. I'm gonna put some bombs on you. The Sonic RPG, surprisingly not crap.
Well, why would it be? The Mario RPG is one of the best. Why would Sonic have to be bad?
That's absolutely true. Well, because everything Sonic is just a crappy version of Mario.
Sonic's got some issues.
So, BioWare also did Jade Empire, right?
Yes,
they did.
Yep. And then
that's basically like Knights of the Old Republic in like a fictional like ancient Japan, right?
Yeah.
Or China.
It's supposed to be excellent, but I've never really sat down to play it.
Yeah, I've actually beaten that twice.
Oh, really? Is it comparably good?
Yeah, it's excellent. If you can, I mean, the part that is hard to get into it is that you don't know the characters, so it's not Star Wars. You don't really like have a relation. But if you like, kung fu fighting and Oriental mythology, it's the game itself is great. Like it's got the same style of Paragon Renegade, morality, which they've been perfecting for a while, and then it's got different classes that feel different. A lot of the fighting is somewhat It's somewhat turn-based, but real-time. It's a very cool game. It's You can get it on Xbox 360 for like $6, I think, right now too.
I actually have several copies of it. I just haven't actually played it.
In case you want to play it twice.
Yeah, I would say honestly, I probably have at least 3 copies of Jade Empire.
Well, you should try it.
Well, it's one of those things where, like, the box art's really nice, and I think every version of it is a special edition. So whenever I see it at a garage sale for $2 or whatever, I feel compelled to pick it up.
This sounds kind of like Mel Gibson's character from that movie where he's like stalking that chick and he keeps buying the Catcher in the Rye every time he sees it.
I can't say I've ever seen that movie, Dan.
What movie is that?
Was
Mel Gibson fan fiction.
All right. Well, you guys keep having a comment about Mass Effect while I track down this very important bit of useless trivia.
All right, let's talk about our first impressions with the game.
Yeah.
If you could remember that far back, which is like many years ago, but it wasn't a series. It came out of nowhere.
It got a lot of hype though. Like people were really excited for that game.
Yeah.
It didn't so much like take people by surprise. Like Borderlands took people by surprise. Nobody cared about that game, and then a few people bought it and played it with their friends, and then their friends took it up. Mass Effect had a lot of fanfare going for it. I bought it the day it came out, and I played it for about 5 hours and absolutely hated it. I know, it's shocking. The game starts out real strong. So they plop you down on that planet. They give you some guns. They're like, all right, shoot these things. The game looks cool. It feels cool, and it's intriguing. You're there to meet Saren, and he turns out to be a big jerk, and you're intrigued. But then the game takes you to the Citadel, and you spend like the next 4 hours just running around. And I think that's a real detriment to the beginning of the game, because I'm not the only person who's had to complain about it. It starts out so strong, and then it automatically goes to a real lull in the story, I think.
You don't like that?
I don't. I don't always mind it, but I felt like those first couple hours running around the Citadel are probably my least favorite part of Mass Effect. You're stuck there. You're just trying to find people. The map system in Mass Effect is awful. I'm replaying it now, and my biggest complaint all the time is that it's very hard to find your objective, and it's very hard to tell, like, use your radar to tell where you're supposed to be going and like what level you're on, and sometimes things just don't even appear. Like I will be on top of my objective, and the X just won't appear for a couple minutes. So that first, when you're running around the Citadel, it was a real struggle even to just find the people I was supposed to be talking to. And events would be triggered, and I wouldn't even know why. I just feel like it's a real poor start to the game, or at least in my experience. Perhaps you guys had a different experience.
What about you, Dan?
Well, I really my very first playthrough with Mass Effect 1, I didn't actually get that far. I got to the first mission that you get, where you end up at. I was given a mission to go meet somebody on the Citadel, and then I went there, and some event triggered where there was a big battle in the bar, and I thought, oh crap, I did this out of order, and now I missed my chance to meet that guy. I'm like 20 minutes into the game, and I've already missed what I thought was like an important mission or something, and like I was like, oh, what do I do now? And so I got really annoyed that I was like already missing stuff, and I didn't realize it, and so I quit, and I didn't play it for like 6 months. And so I finally came back to it, and I realized that I was just like, you know what, I'm just going to power through no matter what happens. I'm just going to keep going and get past it. It's not a big deal. So I did that, and then after you're done with that mission, the bar sets itself, and the guy's there for you to meet with. And I was like, well, what the heck? That doesn't even make any sense. The whole place was like blown to shit. So that was my first experience with it. Was a little rough, but once I got past that part, everything was smooth sailing. I loved everything about it. I enjoyed exploring the worlds and like with the Mako. I enjoyed I had no issues walking around the Citadel. it was a good sort of like slow introduction to the game, and I was comfortable with that because it's not a style of game that I'd played besides Knights of the Old Republic, and it had been years since I had played that. So it was a nice way to kind of like ease into the.
As far as it's a sci-fi game. I love sci-fi. I opened it up. I'm like, this is so much like Star Trek. It's so cool. And then the beginning, I really thought it was just absolutely masterfully done because they let you make your character. You don't see his face for a while. Then it like says this is the guy. You're not even like you're a commander, but you're not the top ranking dude. There's two people above you when it first starts. You got Anderson and the Torian who's new, and they're all like the character development is super great. There's all these other characters talking about Anderson and the Torian guy, and they're telling you about it like third hand, and you haven't met him yet. Then you go meet them, and it's really cool. They set up this awesome setting. Then you go right into fighting. So you're like in combat in the first, I don't know, 15 minutes of the game, and it's a pretty long combat section too. And you do a lot of stuff. And you do that whole bomb diffusal thing. You got to defuse bombs, which made it seem like there'd be a lot of cool variety in the action sequences because the first one you do is like a bomb defusal, but then there actually is no variety whatsoever going forward.
Yeah,
That's the only bomb defusal you ever do. But then you do that, and then there's a betrayal right away. There's like a big plot twist, and then it sets the tone for this action game. And then you go to the Citadel, which is you're right, it's very slow, but it's a slow introduction into the RPG elements of the game and the hub world, which you're going to spend a lot of time in. And it's really well done. I think they balance action, and I don't think you need to spend 4 hours in the Citadel either. I mean, unless you really got lost. I mean, I beat it like 5 times, like I said. I don't remember how much time I spent the first time. It was considerable because you're looking around for everybody. Once you know where to go, it's quick. But it was fun to walk around and talk to everybody and see that jellyfish talking, like see all the people with tentacle heads, and
The
it was
Hanar.
also new. Yeah, the Hanar, yep, and the Volus. All those guys are so neat. And talking to all these people about like the political situations, this nonsense that just waste of time, but like it's a whole world in there, and you can really get like a setting that's more amazing than any game I played up until Mass Effect, as far as like how deep it is.
My only issue with the Citadel at the beginning of the game is it took me a long time to sort of get a lay of the land. There's a lot of empty space, and I found that sometimes I couldn't really find where people were. And so I spent a lot of time tracking back and forth and backtracking, and it's like those are long distances to walk back and forth in Mass Effect 1. The Citadel is huge, and sometimes you wouldn't be totally certain where you're supposed to go, and so you're like, oh, I'll go check that, or I'll go talk to that person, and like that's a dead end, and maybe I'm just dumb and I'm just not used to this series and this kind of gameplay, but I struggled for a little bit at the beginning, so I kind of understand where Greg's coming from with like. The Citadel is like, this is taking forever, but Alex, I also agree with you that the characters were super interesting visually and what they had to say and the story and like how they introduced you to this world through conversation, and I thought it really enriched the experience very early on and made it much more enjoyable.
Mm-hmm.
There is a lot of dead space in the Citadel. I mean, not galactic space, like area on the Citadel where there's really not much going on, but they still force you to run through it. And while it helps to show the scope of the Citadel, I think from a gameplay element, it was kind of a miss because you just spend so much time running from one thing to the next with not that much to look at in between. And the Citadel's not the best example. There's more later on, but a lot of Mass Effect 1 feels very empty. As the series goes on, they fill a lot of that space in with, just not so much, NPCs or just characters or even boxes or, it just feels like a more lived-in world than in Mass Effect 1. And I think that was part of the issue is that I spent so much time running back and forth, and you only have a actual run, function when you're in combat. You can hit the run button, but you move virtually no faster when you're out of combat to go from one thing to the next. So it was just, to me, it became this real slog getting through like all these story elements, and that was my biggest issue with it.
And in defense of the Citadel, there is that taxi cab service which you can use to go anywhere, but it took me until about the third playthrough to really start using it. but it is there, and you can just teleport to any place in the Citadel at one button. Once you get where everything is, you can go through the Citadel parts in like seconds because you just teleport, talk, and then you just click
Maybe
through
that was
everything.
my issue, and maybe I missed it, and maybe they needed to illustrate that was something you could use better anyway.
They did. You got to talk to that hologram woman, and then she'll tell you all about it. But nobody ever talked to her before.
Why would
They
I
wrote,
talk to a robot?
they wrote all this
Right.
dialogue for her. Nobody ever heard it.
I talked to her. I'm inherently not a fast travel. Like I like the concept of fast travel, but I feel like it kind of takes me out of the game a little bit, so I don't like doing it.
Yeah.
In what was that one we were talking about recently, Greg? Was it L.A. Noire that has a fast travel? And I didn't even realize it really. Like I totally forgot it existed.
The fast travel in L.A. Noire is what makes that game my favorite Rockstar game. The fact that you can just tell your partner to be like, all right, buddy, you drive, and then just go from mission to mission, is the best thing that ever happened to video games.
In Grand Theft Auto, you can get into any cab, and the cab will take you wherever you got to go as well.
Yeah, but
No,
better
what Dan is saying though, I totally agree, and I think this is a Mass Effect 1 to 2 comparison, but it's the perfect time to bring it up. Is that in Mass Effect 2 they got rid of all the walking, and I don't mean just like they made everything smaller. I mean like in Mass Effect 1, when you arrive somewhere, you park your ship, you got to get out of your ship, you walk all the way down the ship to the hull, you get that air dock where they scan you, then you get out into like the docking bay. It takes forever to get anywhere, but I think that does add a lot to the bigness of the game. And then in Mass Effect 2, where all you do is land, get on the planet, and then you don't need to like do all the walking. It makes everything seem like it's less of a universe and more of a you're just going level to level. And it takes a lot of the I don't want to say realism because that's not really what I'm saying, but just epicness out of it. Like walking from your ship onto landfall, like that feels cool.
Agreed. I definitely feel like Mass Effect really nailed the scope of its universe better than any of its sequels did, or realistically better than any other game.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
So most people really love Mass Effect, not so much for its gameplay, which is fun or whatever, but people really love its story
And the sex.
and the sex, which is so weird. I mean, I don't know, like.
No, I'm just kidding. Nobody loves it for that.
I do.
That's all anybody ever wants to talk about.
It's true. Well, yeah, back then it was all over the news.
Who can I bone in this one? No, it's not just back then. Like with Dragon Age Inquisition, obviously it's a BioWare thing. There's entire articles on Kotaku about like who you can romance and what you can do to romance them and whether they're gay or not or whether they're anything that moves. Like it's all anybody ever wants to talk about. And it was a news thing back then. Like the phrase sex box came from Mass Effect. People were out.
Yeah, well, as far as story goes, let's talk about that one. It's so good, I think. In the context of just the first game, not even talking about the series, the first game is just so good. There's twists, there's turns, there's well-developed characters. The villain is relatable, which is like, how do you do that? They made a villain that that he seems like a villain, but then as you progress through the game, he turns out like to be totally reasonable, in a way. It's crazy.
Yeah, like any time a villain can at least make you think for a second that they have a good point, that's a good villain. Like when Agent Smith is explaining to Morpheus like how much he hates humans in the first Matrix, that's when Agent Smith becomes a compelling villain. It's like he has his own motivations that make sense to him, and you're like, yeah, you know what? Humans are kind of gross.
Yep.
One of the things that I thought was really successful about enhancing the story of Mass Effect was they introduced you to the world like very passively, but it wasn't it wasn't. It was a lot of it was through conversation, and it wasn't like, hey, you've unlocked something in your journal, go read the journal. Like they had some of that stuff, but there's a lot of it that you picked up from like reading the description of planets or talking to people or just kind of like observing the world around you. And I like that because they don't like jam it down your throat, but they also don't make it so obscure and like overwhelming and in-depth that you just don't even want to bother. They found in my opinion, they found a really good balance between just letting you play the game, but also giving you the information you need to understand the context.
Yeah.
So along the same lines of the story, people really love the characters in the Mass Effect universe, so much so that it is even the driving force behind Mass Effect. Like, everybody just wants to talk about the characters, and they all have their favorites and everything. Did you guys have favorite characters?
Oh, I loved every character in Mass Effect 1. I mean, Garrus is my favorite, and then Rex is my second favorite. But I love them all.
I feel like Garrus is everybody's favorite. He never did much for me. I think what's interesting is the people you choose to befriend might not be the right word, but if you invest time in a character, they become endearing to you in the Mass Effect universe. Like, I chose not to invest my time in Garrus, so he never became, that important to me. But the people I did invest the time in, they're the people I love the most. And maybe that's, facilitating its own cycle. But, like, they do such a wonderful job of creating such deep backstories that if you delve into them, they're going to be your favorite characters.
Who are your favorites?
I actually really liked Tali and Rex. And I'm embarrassed at the moment because I can't remember her name, but I really like the Asari as well.
Liara.
Liara.
Oh, you're laughing at my favorite? Come on.
Well, she's your favorite. You can't remember her name. the ever memorable Liara.
In my defense, I can't even remember most of my friends' names most of the time.
My favorite characters were hands down Garrus and Tali. Very quickly, they became my favorite characters. In the first one, there was a lot of still like finding your path, but I kept gravitating towards those two, and I typically had them in my party. I found Rex to be really interesting, but I didn't really enjoy having him with me in my party. I liked talking to him on the ship, but I liked having Garrus and Tali as my backup, and I really enjoyed their backstories the most.
In regards to gameplay, how often was your choice on who to bring with you on missions gameplay related and personal preference? Do you understand my question?
Yeah.
Yeah. For me, honestly, I usually just picked based on preference, unless I really thought I was going to get into like a really significant firefight. I would typically not bring what I would consider a powerhouse, such as Rex. You like those air quotes?
Yeah.
I would bring Rex along with me every now and then when I thought things were going to hit the fan. But for the most part, I just stuck with Tali and Garrus. I just combined them into one character.
It's Terra's team. The Mass Effect 1 had that like bar below when you pick your team, and it had biotech and combat. I forgot what it was. And the first couple of times the first time I played it, I thought that was really important to have a balance. So I'd always like focus on balancing those out to make sure they were even and not to go too heavy on one, because I was afraid I'd get into a situation where I'd need bio but didn't have it. I quickly realized that isn't at all necessary, and that has no meaning at all there. So I don't know why they put it there. And then I started really picking based on who I liked and who like Shepard would bring.
Part of my problem too with the first one is that I didn't really understand the concept of the biotic powers as like a thing that I can use, and also something that my supporting characters can use. And so I paid like no attention to it. I pretty much ignored it for the entire game, and I don't know. I just had like a total brain fart about the biotic powers. And then in 2 and later on, I realized these are absolutely essential to the game and put a lot more emphasis on it. But in the first one, it was like a total like, man, I'm a soldier. I'm just gonna shoot things.
Yeah, I didn't quite realize that it didn't matter who you brought with you until about halfway through my current playthrough. I was the same way as Alex. I was like, all right, well, I'm really good at biotics, so I'm going to bring a strong combat and a strong tech with me. Then no matter what happens, I got it covered. But what I've realized is that I wind up doing like 95% of the work anyway, so it makes virtually no difference who I bring with me. So I just bring the people I like to talk to.
Now, what does matter though is that one of my favorite things about this game, which I think they underutilized greatly, was that having a tech specialist with electronics is important to opening things and deciphering artifacts. You need to, like, when you find crap at, like, on a planet, it says, like, your tech skill's too low. If you bring, Rex and Caden or something, or not Caden, Ashley and Rex, for example, and you're not a tech person, you need electronics and sabotage, or I forgot what it is, to open artifacts and locks. And I thought that was really cool because, like, in KOTOR, you got to bring a little droid to, like, unlock some stuff because you got a really high, unlock skill. That's neat to supplement your party with those kind of benefits, but I think it was totally underutilized. Why are you guys laughing at me?
I'm actually laughing at Dan because he wants to bring up a special point.
Bring it up, Dan.
Well, so Greg and I, he was playing this a few weeks ago, and I was hanging out with him. We were both playing it, and continually we have had this misconception that, like, if you should be able to bring a tech person with you to unlock stuff, but all their tech powers are all offensive, and you need to have your tech skill up. This is our understanding: is you need to have your tech skill up to unlock things. If you have Tally with you, you can't, like, tell her to go unlock it. And so
it measures your highest tech skill among your group to unlock things.
Is that true?
Yeah. So if you bring Tally with a high skill, then she's the one. Like, it'll still tell you. You'll still be doing the work, but it'll use her skill. So if you're like a biotic with no tech skills whatsoever, you'd never open anything. So you bring Tally or Garrus, and they have to open it for you.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow. I completely did not understand that.
No,
that makes sense. That's the way it should be.
It wasn't clear. It was not clear. But if in your way, if you were a person with no tech skills, you just couldn't open anything, and that would break the game.
Well, that's that's kind of what I thought. Is like if you didn't invest, like, you're supposed, like, I thought that's the point of the game, is like you sort of balance your stuff because you're sort of like a middleman for the most part, like middle of the road in terms of powers. I thought that's what they were sort of trying to gear you towards, so that you didn't totally skip one type of skill and focus on others. But what you're saying totally makes sense, and I wish that was more obvious because I would have benefited from that greatly.
They probably should make that more obvious because when you get the error, it just says tech skill too low, which doesn't imply in any way that anybody but you can have that skill, or it doesn't ever tell you, now that I think about it, that you need to bring a tech specialist.
It should say like a party combined tech skill too low or something like that.
It should say that, yep. It says, like, in like the description of electronics, it'll tell you this skill is applied to opening locks, but if it's like on Tally, that is weird. You wouldn't know that automatically. But why I think that's underutilized is because it only cares about tech skill. And, like, so you want to bring a tech person with you most of the time, especially if you're a soldier or a biotic, but the biotic skills are never required. And I wish there were. I wish there were times where there was, like, a huge rock or something that you couldn't move physically and you needed, like, biotic powers to move it, or I don't know how to get it in there, but it'd be nice to have the foil of that, where you need a tech specialist here, but you also need a biotic specialist to do this stuff, so they can both have, like, equal play, because they only focus on this one skill, which is kind of, like, it's cool they focus on it, but they forgot to use the rest.
Or maybe like smash a lock or something.
Yeah.
Maybe the logic behind that is that, this is a futuristic sci-fi game. You're surrounded by technology. Maybe that's the thought, is like, this is an essential skill to surviving in this universe.
Yeah.
But it's still, you're right. It would have. I mean, they had other things to balance your party. They should have focused on all of them and not just one.
Let me tell you about one thing that bugs me about this game a lot. And maybe this would be a segue into how you play your game. Like, what choices did you make? When you first made your first Shepherd, how did you make him? Was he Paragon, Renegade, what class?
Mine was a Renegade. I think it was a Renegade Vanguard. I should double check that.
What about you, Dan?
I don't remember what class I was. What other? Can you refresh my memory? I don't remember what they are.
Sure, you got Soldier, Adept, and Engineer, and those are the hard tech bio or soldier. And then you have the Vanguard, who's the bio-soldier hybrid, the Sentinel, who's the bio-tech hybrid, and the Infiltrator, who's the tech-soldier hybrid with a sniper rifle.
I think I was either a soldier or the last one you mentioned, the tech-soldier hybrid.
Yeah, you Paragon or Renegade?
I was definitely Paragon, because my thought process was, and I think we'll probably get into this a little bit again later, but Shepard was in a very unique position. Like I learned very quickly, he's not the highest ranked soldier in this whole story, but he's certainly higher up in the organization. He he has a lot of responsibility that he shoulders. He's a captain. He's in some ways he's a diplomat, even if he's not really like excited about having the job. And he's an officer. He has all these important roles, and it didn't fit in my head that he would be a jerk to people and take advantage of them, and then also have these kind of moral high ground jobs to deal with. I mean, if he was just a politician, I can understand him being a terrible person, but he's all these other things too, where they would instill in you a sense of like honor and duty and care for the people that you work with and below you. And so it seemed really out of character, in my opinion, to play anything but Paragon.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. That's how I felt as well about it. For me, when I came off of Knights of the Old Republic, and I knew this game has the, Jedi versus Sith system, and in Jedi Empire, which I played that a couple times, it had a similar system of good and evil. I really thought it was implemented so poorly in those games. It was so just stupidly done that being a Sith in KOTOR makes no sense at all. I think it's just the dumbest thing, because you have Bastila, who's on your left hand, who's like a Jedi, and then you have Karth, who's on your right hand, who's also super good, and you can tell they're good because they have a big blue bar, and then you're walking around going, hey, Bugface, time to die, and you just kill a dude for no reason, like right in front of both of them. And it's like, there's no way a Jedi would let you, even if she's like your friend or is working with you, she would cut you down before you killed an innocent person for no reason at all, like just being a Sith. It wouldn't go. Like, it doesn't make any sense. While they stand by, like, they go sometimes, you shouldn't use the Force to, force people into giving you a discount. Well, thanks for the warning, but I just killed a dude, like, not half an hour ago for no reason. So I'm coming off of those games going, well, I'm never going to be evil because it breaks the story. So in Mass Effect, I'm not going to make that mistake.
I definitely agree with that point, and not only does it in some ways break the story, but I feel like it lessens your experience because there's so many doors that are closed to you, and I think this is a problem with this style of like, do you play good or do you play evil? And it has to have a lot of careful consideration and thought and effort put into it to really make it successful. Because if I always feel like in these kind of games, the story is really designed for you to work along the good path, and when you do bad things, it simply closes doors and you miss opportunities either to just learn more about the game or the people, or missions that you don't get an opportunity to do, or loot or money or whatever. And so I always feel like if I choose the bad option, even if it's fun, I'm missing out on stuff, and so I don't want to do it.
Now, I do want to say that in Mass Effect, it's handled much better. It's handled much better, and I want to I'll come back to that when we really talk about the different choices. In the other games, it's poorly done. In Mass Effect, it's well done, and I want to talk about why in a bit later. But what I want to talk about is how it bugs me, and I've never met anybody else this bugs, it's just me, that I don't believe that Shepard should be biotic, ever. I think that is kind of a broken story element, because they talk a lot in the game about biotic powers and how the Asari have them and the Turians do not, and the Krogans do have them, and humans are just barely developing them. And through Caden, who's a biotic, he's got all these stories about how he went to brain camp and has all these painful implants in his head. Like, he's got implants in his head, and he talks about how they give him severe migraines, and some people are just completely comatose from these like implants, and it's just been brutal human testing thing that they went through in these different camps. And if Shepard's a biotic, I feel like special attention should be paid to like mention that, but it's not written in the story at all. He just happens to be like the best biotic ever. He's got no implants. He never has any migraines, and his power level is on par with Caden, who's got like these amplifier implants in his head. And I think it's just a big ball drop to like even explain away how Shepard just magically is a biotic without going through any kind of biotic training.
I sort of imagined while the story was going on that eventually Shepard was going to be more, if that makes any sense. By the end, he's still just really good at his job. But through Knights of the Old Republic and essentially any other RPG you've ever played, by the end of the game, your guy is always special. There's always something about him that made him the best of all time. Um, so as you're going through, I just assumed that Shepard was going to be like the pinnacle of human biotics of some sort. So it never really bothered me at the time. It now, with that perspective is interesting because we know the end. They never really explain that. But I
Hmm.
always just imagined that he was going to be, some sort of messiah figure more than they actually made him.
Yeah.
Did they have? Because I know at the very beginning of the game you pick sort of like a little backstory to sort of guide your character a little bit. Do any of those relate to him having biotic powers? I don't remember.
No, definitely not.
Because like that would have made sense.
Yep, exactly. That would have made sense if they just had in there, like if you pick biotic, they just add a little script in where a few people mention it. Like if Caden just said, "What about your implants, Shepard? How did they feel?" And then Shepard just says, "Oh, I have. I'm one of the lucky ones. I had no issues." Just that little thing there would have just closed this one up for me. But the way it is now, it's just like humans have to go like they have to go through a lot of shit to become biotic, and Shepard just is awesome. So I always like tend to not be biotic Shepard because I think what I like to do is I like to be always a non-biotic Shepard in 1, and then be biotic in 2, because then I feel like Cerberus gave you biotic implants when they rebuilt you, and you could go from a soldier to a vanguard in 2, and that makes sense to me in my mind. So that's how I can play it.
I love that. That is like some next level RPG play.
Yeah,
Like outside of the game, you're still playing the game.
I
That's
gotta feel
that's
comfortable.
genius. No, I
It's
really love it. That's the kind of stuff I love about video games.
it's funny because that's what I ended up doing, but I didn't do it like uh, consciously because I realized quickly in 2, oh, these powers are super important and really awesome. And so like I went like balls out at that point with the biotic powers, but in 1, like I didn't even touch them in 1. And I was just like, these are stupid. I don't want them.
Well, I mean, I'm playing as a biotic now, and the biotics in this game are very underpowered compared to like the third game. Uh, by the time the third game comes around, I don't even use weapons. It's just like spamming, one biotic after another. Like I lift them up and then I pummel them, and then I lift them up and pummel them. There's one after another. Um, so I definitely felt like the biotics in this were like slightly underpowered. I'm also having a lot of trouble aiming them. Maybe I'm just an idiot, but
Well, they
I
can't
would say,
curve.
yeah, I would say I miss with my biotic power 75% of the time.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean they're different. I wouldn't say they're underpowered because in Mass Effect 1 they always work through shields and everything. So like if you got a guy with full shields and you hit him with throw, he's getting tossed. Like it's for sure going to hit him and he's going to fly really far away. But yeah, they do run into boxes and shit and then they don't do anything. And they have that really long cooldown, which until way later in the game is super hard. Like when you have throw, it's like a 70-second cooldown. You're like,
Yeah,
okay, I'll see
no,
you. If you miss it, you're screwed. But then at the end of the game, like you have so many powers, you can use them all in succession, and like you can lock down like an entire fight with singularity there and a lift over there and a stasis there, and all of a sudden everybody's just like tossed. Where in 2 and 3, you got to take their shields down first, or the barrier, or their armor before they have any effect. Well, not any effect, but a serious effect.
right.
So it's different, very different. But yeah.
Um,
So should we talk about let's talk about Renegade and Paragon because I think it's important.
yeah, let's do that.
Uh, what I want to say is how much better they did it in this game, and the way I always describe it to people who when I tell it to them is imagine Star Trek, and you got Captain Picard, who's the Paragon, and then if Worf was the captain of the Enterprise, he would be a renegade. Now Worf is not an evil person. He's not out to do harm. Like in the way Knights of the Old Republic, when you're a Sith, you're straight up doing evil. You're doing evil deeds. And in Baldur's Gate, when you're a bad person, you kill people for fun. That's not happening in Mass Effect. They did it a good job where you're still making the right decision. You're just kind of doing like, I'll sacrifice anybody to complete the mission. And the mission itself is, save a planet or save the galaxy. So what can stand in your way when you're talking about saving the galaxy if you're Worf? You're going to cut them down. You got to get there. So it makes a lot of sense where you're just a, nothing but the mission kind of guy.
Well, it's like
But not
it's like the difference between lawful good and chaotic good, and I feel, but I don't feel like the game necessarily works that way, and I feel in most games it doesn't, but I feel like that's how it should work. Like you're willing to manipulate the system ultimately for a good cause. That seems more appropriate than I'm just going to be an a-hole and
Mhm.
steal from people.
Yes.
On
I think
this playthrough, I've I haven't been choosing things like Paragon or Renegade. Like it's like, all right, well in this run through, I'm a Renegade. I'm just gonna run around, punch everybody in the face. Or on Paragon, everybody can just run all over me and whatever. Uh, I'm really picking how I think I personally would react in those situations. Um, and it's creating a much more interesting experience for me because sometimes I get mad and I yell at somebody, and sometimes I'm much more polite than I feel like I would normally be because I'm really trying to get into that role of like the situation and stuff. And I don't feel like not choosing Paragon or Renegade has really adversely affected my experience. If anything, it's made it better, and I don't feel like the game is punishing me for doing that. So maybe people just don't do that enough. People like decide ahead of time, all right, I'm a Renegade or I'm a Paragon, and they just stick to it, and they don't really get that experience of just being themselves in the game.
Well, the game doesn't. This is a problem that I have with this game and games like it. Is you get points for picking the hardline choices, and you don't get points for picking the middle choice. Like you get Paragon or Renegade points, and it says plus 27 Renegade points, and you want those points. Why do you want them? Because sometimes on the wheel you have blue and red choices, which are bright blue and red, and you have to earn those by being blue and red all game long. And then if there's a time where there's an option you miss because you don't have enough of one, you do feel like you missed something. And then, since once you beat the game 5 times, you know everything, you don't care. But when you're beating the game the first time and you're like, well, I don't have that red option, why? And then if you figure it out or read up on it, it's because you don't have enough Paragon points or Renegade points. So then you feel like you got to go hardline, you got to invest in one of them because it's the only way you're going to get the top level of the, there is content you will never get. The primary content is when Saren shoots himself at the very end of the game. You can only get that scene, which is a very powerful and awesome scene. You can only get it if you're very high in one of the 2 options.
Is that so? I have some of the bright blue options, even though I'm choosing to go, relatively middle line. I assumed that was because Charm was the first thing I boosted with all of my points. And I haven't put anything into Intimidate. So in my brain, I was thinking that Charm was what relegated the bright blue, and Intimidate was what dictated the bright red. But I guess I was incorrect.
It's both. There's an influence there. So you get like a bonus when you pick Charm, and then the core of it is how many blue points you have. But if you max out Charm, you're not going to be able to get Saren to you're not going to charm Saren into suicide at the end of the game. You're going to have to go hardcore. You got to go hardcore Paragon to do that, or Renegade.
That might be the best sentence I've ever heard. You're not going to be able to charm Saren into suicide.
I didn't see that scene until my 3rd playthrough. I wanted it too. In the first one, I didn't know what I was doing, so I was playing like you. I was like making choices. I wasn't committing. I was mostly Paragon, but not committal. And then the second playthrough, I kind of went more Renegade just to see what was going on, but I hated some of the options, so I didn't do it. And both times I couldn't see the Saren suicide. I'm like, well, I got to see that. So in my 3rd playthrough, I finally went hardcore Paragon just so I can really see that. And there's some other choices that are important as well, but that's the really one that you got to earn your points for. But I think the game, in forcing you to pick a side like that, it does detract from the experience because you can't actually role play yourself. You can only role play Paragon or Renegade Shepherd, and it really pushes you to do that.
Well, Greg and I were having kind of an interesting discussion about this yesterday, and the way that I approach the game, so I mentioned this before, that I thought Shepherd, because of his position and his job, he should be acting a certain way. But I still put myself into the game as like a role-playing experience, but I didn't do it strictly from my own perspective. I did it from the perspective of, okay, I'm putting myself in Shepherd's shoes, and I'm a captain, I'm a diplomat, I'm a soldier, I'm all these things. If I had all this experience behind me and I was responsible for all this stuff, what would I do? So it was like my own choices, but they were tempered by Shepherd's experiences.
Like, which, for example, you wouldn't punch a reporter in the face on national broadcast?
Right. I mean, I wouldn't do that either, but
well, yes,
I don't think
that's what I'm talking about these choices that are like, that are silly. Like, you can't, Shepard would never punch someone in the face on TV. Like, he's a representative of humanity, of the Alliance, of the Spectres, and he's just knocking a reporter out. Like, that's ridiculous.
But the thing is like every now and then I would pick a choice which I thought seemed like the at the very worst, middle of the road option, and it would like there would be no issue. And then I would get every now and then I would get some renegade points, and I'd be like, oh man, renegade points, I don't want those. But like on the same token, like that was still my own like decision making coming through, because I could have picked something else that seemed like it was going to be maybe a nicer option, but I didn't. So it's like there was sort of like a blending between like Shepard as like a automated character and Shepard as like I'm controlling him.
So something I just wanted to bring up in regards to this is the concept of the character as an avatar for the player. When and if and when you guys play an RPG or a game, how much do you tend to put yourself into the character? The big thing being, like, for example, Gordon Freeman. They choose to not give Gordon Freeman a voice because they want your character. They want you to feel like that character. But Shepard, they give a personality to a certain extent. They give him a voice and a role. But this is more of a role-playing game than Half-Life. So do you guys find yourself projecting into a character, or is it you just play however, just play the game, don't think about it very much?
In this game, in video game role-playing games, almost never. I always pick a character, and that's like not me. It's a different person. It's not like role-playing in paper and pencil where there's no picture, there's no voice. The fact that Shepard's on the box and Shepard has a history and Shepard has a voice and an actor, that's a different person. I'm just, like I'm Commander Chief, I'm Shepard, but it's not really me. I don't really see it that way, especially if you're like a woman where it's totally like not you at all. So I kind of treat it like a game where I'm just playing a character.
I think it depends on what kind of game it is, because in a game like Halo or Half-Life, there's really very little decision making, and it's a pretty straightforward game. So there's not a lot of opportunity to really express your decisions and your attitudes and your personality. Whereas in a game like this, Mass Effect, it seems like through your decision making, you have an opportunity to express a personality that's sort of laid over the character. Like they've sort of like, this is what the character is, this is his backstory, this is what he's like, this is how he looks and sounds, and then you're sort of enhancing it through your decision making. So I felt like I got more involved in the character when I had options and could kind of choose his path to some degree. I don't really feel like I'm the Master Chief or I'm Gordon Freeman.
Yeah, I always just sort of play the game. For an example, in Skyrim, I would prefer to just run around and take whatever I need to take, and murder whoever I need to murder, whatever. But I don't want to deal with, for example, the police in those situations, so I choose not to do that. So I play the game more than I play myself in the game. Just simply because I don't want there to be some sort of detriment that the game puts upon me for playing the way I want to play. I was just curious about that, because a lot of people, they give you the option in Mass Effect to either create yourself as Shepard. They have that quote unquote robust character creation screen. So the idea is that you can make yourself. You can spend the time and mold that face into you, so that while you're playing Mass Effect, you are the person in command. You are Commander Shepard, but then they give you a last name, they give you a backstory, they give you a role, they give you a job. So to me, mechanically, I feel like the character creation conflicts with how they want you to play that game. So I was just interested if you guys had a perspective on that.
It's the fact that Shepard has a face on the box that always it was really hard for me to custom make a male Shepard when I know that he already has a look. Like that's what he looks like already. And he's based on a real person even. They had like a model for him. And then when I played as a female Shepard, then I had no choice but to customize her face. So I had a much easier time doing it. But with the male shepherd, it was really like, I mean, they already kind of told me what he looks like, and now I'm breaking, I'm messing with their vision. So my first couple shepherds are just like the regular guy before I started making him look burly.
Yeah.
I could not use a different. I used the default shepherd in all 3 games and just stuck with it, and I could not use another one. Every time I watch a Mass Effect video and they've got somebody's stupid-looking custom shepherd head, I just think this is so awkward and I hate it. And there's nothing I dislike more than watching literally on Earth, nothing I dislike more than watching somebody's YouTube video with an alternate shepherd head.
Yeah, I know you feel.
Let's
So
just
should
quickly
we-
touch back on. Go ahead.
Oh, you go ahead. Touch back.
Yeah, let's touch back on the story. Alex, you wanted to mention something called the Rex paradox, which
Yeah, I do. So who's that guy that does Hey Ash, what you playing? You mentioned him before.
Anthony Birch, who is one of my
Yeah.
personal heroes.
Yeah, that guy. So I have no idea who he is, but I know he did this Rex paradox, and that's all I know him from.
I
He used to
actually
be
met
a
him once.
giant bomb writer. Is that where he's from, or Destructoid? Whoops,
Oh,
I lost Greg. We lost Greg.
Oh
No.
no, I'm back. I'm back.
Oh, there
Sorry,
you go.
I don't know what's up with
So,
that.
that was scary.
you know what side is he from? Is he Giant Bomb or Destructoid?
He was from Destructoid.
Yeah. Okay. So anyway, he wrote this article once called the Rex Paradox, which it was, I forgot what the article is. Maybe I'll try to dig it up. But the point of it was that he accidentally shot Rex in that beach scene where Rex starts talking shit about the genophage, and Commander Shepard's renegade option is to blast him. And Anthony was playing not renegade, and he loved Rex, his favorite character, and he shot him. And then he just felt like this horrible pain about how he had to just kill his best friend. And then he reloaded the game and made the right decision that he intended. But then the point of his story was that like the heart, like you developed this great relationship with Rex, and then at the climax of that relationship, you have a choice to either kill your best friend or just not kill him. And no rational person who built a relationship with Rex would ever kill him. It doesn't make any sense. Like there's no way he would ever make that choice. It's ridiculous, unless you were playing a hardline renegade, in which case you know what's going to happen and you don't cherish the relationship. So the emotional moment you get when Rex is murdered on the beach, no one will ever feel unless they kill him on accident. So the paradox is like all the really heart-tugging moments of the story that you can only make through choices like that, no one will ever see, because those people won't make those choices that care. And that's really interesting, and that happens in this game. And I think in Mass Effect 3, they actually fixed it, and you do see some of those choices despite what you pick. And that's really great writing. But in this one, I think that like I kind of figured you kill Rex if you went Renegade, but I never saw it because I'm never going Renegade to kill Rex. So that's what he wrote in an article. I'll try to find a link for you.
I have two points about that. Are we worrying about spoilers at all? I assume not.
No.
I agree that by the time Mass Effect 3 rolls around, they definitely nailed that. Like with Morden, who no matter what you say, he sacrifices himself. The choices you're making are how you end your relationship with him. He's going to die either way, but you still get that Renegade and Paragon options with him. So they definitely fixed the issue by the time Mass Effect 3 rolls around. And I totally forgot what my other point was.
Well, it's a good one.
Excellent.
All right, well let's move on to some more gameplay stuff, like how the game actually is. Because I would say that even though it's my favorite game of the series, it definitely plays the worst.
Oh yeah, not even close.
Yeah. So first, it's this horrible face builder they have. It's terrible, and not that like it makes ugly faces. It's fine, but it's just so limiting. And what I found, this is what I was bitching up and down about this when it first came out, is how before Mass Effect I was really into Fight Night, the EA game Fight Night. Like that's a boxing game.
Yeah.
Now EA sports games, I don't play them, but I've seen them. I've seen the football games, and I've seen Fight Night I play. In Fight Night, you can build your boxer, and the amount of customization to his face you can make is absolutely mind-boggling.
Yeah, it's
Like,
incredible.
It's plastic surgeon level. Like you can make a guy look exactly like Mike Tyson, or like yourself, or like your mother. You can make a guy look exactly how you want, and like it's insane. And that's an EA game. Like EA owns all of that software. Why don't you let BioWare borrow it? Like, why doesn't BioWare go, hey, I played any of your fucking sports games, and this face editor you have, can we just have it? Yeah, sure, you can have it. Like, you have like 4 noses in Mass Effect. 4 noses. Like, there's like 7 hairs, and they're all stupid looking, except for bald, which is the only one that looks any good. Like, what the hell's going on?
Well, this plays into my issue with the faces. I mean, one, I was totally happy with default Shepard, but this also plays into why I don't like other people's versions of Shepard, is because I don't think they look nearly as good. I feel like the level of effort and detail that went into default Shepard is like light years beyond the custom faces that people can come up with. I think the custom faces are fine. I think default Shepard is incredible.
Yeah,
And so it's like, why would I have a crappy character model when I can have the one that looks 10 times better?
I'm playing as Fem Shep right now, and in the character creation, I made like a totally fine-looking woman. But once you actually like drop her into the universe, it's like this hideous, grotesque clay monster running around trying to save everything.
Clay
Like,
fighter.
I'm surprised they don't get shot on sight as being the aggressor here. It's like, what is this hideous beast approaching our lair?
We're doing the galaxy a favor by putting her down.
So
Right,
there
well,
definitely is that element where, like, if you just play as the default Shepherd, it looks so much better. And next time I'm gonna play, I definitely will. I had this weird Spanish-looking, scarred-up duck dude in Mass Effect 3. They're awful. They're awful.
Once I got past that, one of the things that's grossly missing in this game is like mini games. There's no mini games. And the entire time I was playing, I was waiting for them. I'm like, where are the mini games? Where's the casino? Where's like the arena? Where's the arcade in the future? Like, you know, in Nice Old Republic, they had that Pazak game, that card game, Pazak, which you could or could not play. You could just not care at all, or you can play it. And I was obsessed with that game. I loved Pazak. I played it everywhere. And I went everywhere looking for all the best cards, and I made the best decks, and I tried to go find people to play. I loved it. It was a fun little blackjack game that was pretty stupid, but it's collectible, and it was just added a lot to the game, you know. And then KOTOR also had that like pod racing mini game, which happened twice. And then it had those shooting elements between planets sometimes, where you're like shooting down TIE fighters. Those all like that's necessary for an epic RPG to have. Like think about any Final Fantasy game, any Super Nintendo game that has like Mario RPG or Chrono Trigger. They all have like mini games that you're playing all the time.
All the time.
Well, not all the time, but they're in there. You know, you can choose to play them.
Games.
And then in Mass Effect,
Literally all the time.
You get like I guess you can call the Mako like planet exploration a mini game, you know, or Mako parts maybe. You have this awful Galaxy Blackjack game, which is like the worst implemented thing ever, and then no other mini games. Yeah, it's terrible. And there's no like shooting like turret sections or, I mean really I want some arcades, like some Space Invader thing, like at the just chilling in the Citadel. Like here's a little Space Invader game.
You just want like a real easy, relaxing, like no thought required time killer every now and then to sort of like break the seriousness of the game.
Yeah, I mean that, or just a transition period, like when you're even like when you're hacking boxes or whatever. You have like that Simon game, which is like the most half-assed piece of shit implementation of a lock-picking game in the world. On PC, if you've seen the PC version of that, like which just came out after Xbox and whatever, there's actually like a lock-picking game. You know, like
Which
there's like
real cool.
It looks fun. Yeah, it looks way better, and I love that. And then this like push X, push A. You just picked a lock. It's like what kind of lock-picking game is this? It's really like lacking, you know. And when you're going through a warp relay, like you actually have to play some mini game to like launch properly or land. Like maybe when you're landing from warp, you got to dodge a few rocks just so you don't damage your ship. You know, just something that's really simple like that. But this game has none of that. It's crazy to have an RPG. I think it's lacking.
So the biggest complaint about Mass Effect is its inventory system, which is absolutely abysmal. I don't know if I've ever played a game with a worse inventory system. Have you?
It'd be hard to make a worse one.
It's garbage.
why is it garbage? Does anybody want to talk about it?
It's so disorganized, and like keeping track of what you have, and like putting stuff together, and it's just like this long running list of crap you've picked up, and it's just like it's such a disorganized mess.
Yeah, and you pick things up at such a rapid clip, um, that it's easy to lose track of what you just picked up. But in between menu checks, I'll have picked up 30 things, and it's hard to tell like what's better than the other one, and it's just this long list. Like nothing bugs me more than just a list in a game.
The problem with it is that it doesn't matter what you picked up because it's all the same shit. That's the real problem of it. I mean, the fact that you pick up 30 things, yeah, that they shouldn't be picking up 30 things because you shouldn't be picking up 30 scimitar shotguns. Why do you need 30 of them? Why don't we just stack them up? Why can't it just say scimitar times 30? And why are there 30? And then the other thing is like they have all these guns. Like I have the guide, okay, and the guns work really simply. There's 8 brands of gun, like companies that make them, like Aramax Arsenal and Kelos Combine, whatever, and then they make 1 through 10 of their gun. That's what it is. Like 10 is always better than 1. 6 is always better than 4. There's no like comparison. But even then, if between companies there was different guns, like maybe Elcos makes really accurate guns, but this one makes really high damage inaccurate guns. No, one brand is just straight up better. Like the Russian sounding brand is just the best brand of guns. And then every other gun you get sucks compared to that, or whatever. And eventually, once you get Spectre gear, forget about it. Once you get Spectre guns, they blow the hell out of everything. Then you might as well not pick anything up anymore. And they really have the guns have stats. They have 3 stats, but they never actually vary them enough to make you care. Like look at Borderlands. It has 1 million guns. They're all different. Mass Effect has 1 million guns. They're all the fucking same. So why have 1 million guns at all? I mean, the shotgun is different than the pistol, yes, but there's so many pistols, and it's so clear. Okay, that's the best pistol. Every other pistol's not better a little bit or worse a little bit, just worse. It's just dumb.
Yeah. I want all the listeners to remember the point that Alex just made now for when we talk about Mass Effect 2, because I'm going to bring that up again, but I would prefer to leave Mass Effect 2 in its own podcast. So do we have any other more general complaints about the game, or anything that you really like to talk about that you really loved about it?
Let me think.
I absolutely hated Kaidan.
Why?
I have never been so uninterested in a character in a game like this in my entire life. And I had no difficulties whatsoever killing him when the time came. I was like, you're boring, you're out, you're done.
Now on that part, did you know who you were killing in that section?
Yeah, because
I had a pretty hard time figuring out who's actually sacrificing.
No, it was I did not struggle. I didn't accidentally pick him. There was I made a clear decision, and I was not confused in the situation. And I took the time to listen to all the crap that Kaidan had to say. I just thought he was boring and really uninteresting and didn't add a ton to the game. I was just like, meh, you're dumb. You're dumb and boring. I want you to die now.
Did you ever... Who plays Renegade? Greg, you're playing Renegade right now?
No, right now I'm just middle of the road. My original play was Renegade.
Did you talk to Ashley a lot in a hardcore Renegade playthrough?
No.
Ashley, I haven't done this. I don't remember exactly anymore because that was a lot of playthroughs ago, but I played hard Renegade, and Ashley is she's a xenophobe. So yeah. She's kind of a racist against aliens. But when you play as a Renegade against her, the conversations are just really weird and schizophrenic almost. Because what you do at first is you agree with her. And you're like, yeah, aliens shouldn't be trusted, and humans first, and Shepard's got this mentality. But then as you proceed the conversation, he starts getting on her case about it. Are you saying you don't trust me to make the right choices in the team? And she's like, no, that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that aliens shouldn't be trusted. If you can trust me. And then but a second ago he was supporting her and not trusting aliens. And then he changes. It's a really weird conversation path. It's kind of busted. It doesn't work. It's a weird thing because you support her in being racist, and then at the same time you reprimand her for not trusting the aliens, and then in the meantime Shepard's either racist or not. It's like this weird thing. It's just really broken. I like Kaden fine.
I did not quite realize the choice I was making my first playthrough, and I definitely killed Ashley and was stuck with Kaden for Mass Effect 2 and 3.
You killed her on accident.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what was happening. Maybe this was 6-7 years ago at this point. Maybe at the time I chose to do that. Like I made a conscious decision, but I don't remember making a real choice at that point. I think I was just like going along. It's like, all right, well, I don't need Kaden for this, or I don't need Ashley for this mission. I would prefer to take Kaden anyway, so I'm just going to send her to go do that thing. And then she died.
It's a tricky part. It's a tricky part how they set it up because you set the bomb and then you go get the other person, and then halfway through first you pick who's setting the bomb and who's not, and you make them split up, and then you have to make a choice of do you go get the other person out, and you say yes, and then you're going to save them, but then you make another choice to either go back or proceed. But at that point, I'm not really sure what's going to happen anymore. I was like,
right.
And the first time you're playing, you don't even know someone's going to die. The first time you're playing, you don't even know that's a possibility that you can lose a real character. So you're making a choice kind of blind. You don't know that anybody's going to die at all. For all I know, RPG style, everybody's going to make it out. But then the one person actually does die. That was a tough emotional moment.
It's a bit of a surprise because in this game you have a tremendously small party size. In an RPG, 6 party members is not that much. So it's surprising that you can kill one of those two has to die, and potentially you could kill Rex as well and be stuck with 4 party members. That's a pretty ballsy move in my opinion.
It is.
I also remembered my other point from way back when we were talking about Rex.
Yeah.
That part of the game they let you play in any order. You have 3 main missions and then a bunch of side missions you can do. You can actually do that mission first, which is what I did this time, and I had virtually no relationship built up with any of these people. So I understand, now I don't want to shoot Rex in the face because I want him as a party member and he's an interesting character. But it's plausible that if you do that first, you already don't care about Rex, like you don't know that he's a cool dude and you want him in your party. So there's a certain possibility where you just might want Rex, you might just not care and shoot him in the face.
You would, but if you did that, you wouldn't feel the emotional pain of losing a friend.
Well, that's
Greg,
you're right. It's a good point.
Did anybody just get that weird feedback? Sorry to interrupt the video, but
I did.
I did not.
Oh, I'm getting it now.
Your audio sounded real messed up, Alex.
Oh, no.
No, it's so weird.
Do you want to just leave the call and just come back in? It won't affect the recording. We'll just edit this later. He was starting to click a little bit, and then that got way worse.
Yeah, I heard that too.
How am I doing?
Just keep talking.
I'm talking in a normal volume. Speaking at a reasonable volume.
It's a little crackly, but it sounds significantly better. Not like.
Wow, I wonder what happened.
Oh, now it sounds fine.
What I did.
Did a cable get touched or something, or?
I mean, I could touch the cable. Is that doing anything?
It sounds fine now. I don't know if something got
fine.
knocked or a phone was causing interference or something weird, but
let me just repeat my last line again that I said to Greg, and we'll pick it up from there on the other.
Okay.
But in that case, you wouldn't have that emotional connection to Rex.
That's a good point. And then I suppose his article still makes sense. So we're coming up on the end here. The last thing I really want to talk about, and then if anybody, there's actually 2 more things I want to talk about. Do you think the Mass Effect universe feels real? Like, does it feel like a lived-in, old-style universe? We talked about this on our Star Wars episode, that, what made the original Star Wars so great is that it felt like a living universe. What do you think about a Mass Effect?
I think it is. The Citadel looks big, and there's like an underground kind of, the wards are kind of dirty, and the Citadel's clean. And then you go to Pharos and Neveria, and those places kind of are older looking, and they've been there for a long time. There's a ton of people everywhere. There's a really rich history as far as like all the alien races go. You know a lot about everything. It does feel like that. And like those, when you go to different planets, if you invest in that, you go to all those ruins, and there's some of them have people living in them. Some of them are just like a bunch of bones. So I do think it feels that way.
I feel like Mass Effect has really cultivated a very long and complex history within its universe, and I feel like that makes a big difference too. Um, and the other part of like, does this feel like a real world? Is, do you ever picture yourself wanting to live in it? And when I think of stuff similar to that, I think of Star Wars, Star Trek, Battlestar Galactica, Firefly. Like, those are universes that they feel tangible, and like sometimes I think like it would be really interesting to live in that universe. And if you're thinking that, then they've done a good enough job to make it believable. And I feel that with Mass Effect.
Yeah, I think. Well, parts of Mass Effect. I'm on one planet right now. I wish I could remember the name of it. You know, obviously I'm terrible with names. It's the one with the research facilities on it, and then you climb the mountain and go meet the Rachni. Does anybody know the name of that planet?
Noveria.
Noveria. That feels completely empty to me. There's like huge open spaces with nobody in them, and all you do is run back and forth between like the two people who are in that giant room. So that feels really empty to me, but at the same time, like, that's an interesting world. The backstory for that world is interesting. Um, and there's like this really rich history there, and everything in Mass Effect is fun to look at and cool. Like, the people are cool to talk to. The ships look great. Utilitarian ships look like they serve a utilitarian purpose. You know, cool ships like the Normandy look fun and cool to be around. So like, I definitely think the world building of this game is next level good. It just feels like a world that could exist, and I definitely have to give some kudos to that.
I think it's like 99% there. I think every now and then you end up in a situation like the one you just mentioned, or like the disparities between the Citadel, between like 1 and 2 and 3, and how like it's huge and expansive in 1 and then like smaller in 2. And I mean, so there's some disparities here and there where like an area just feels kind of devoid of content. And it happens now and then, but in nearly almost every circumstance, I feel like there's crates in the corner and like a speeder just sort of sitting there, and there's like background characters and people and stuff going on, and like wreckage, and they just do a good job of like filling out the corners and the people and the backstory to just sort of realize this whole environment.
Yeah. All right, and my last point, I just want to point it out. The music in this game is so good. Just from the initial point that you press start, there's this sort of like dull techno sound that happens, and instantly it sets the like tone and feel for this game, and it just sonic music going on is amazing.
Yeah, I should get this. You can listen to it on YouTube, but everybody should definitely, if you haven't. I mean, we all have, but just look it up out of context. It's really good.
It's haunting.
And it's like, yeah, it's really eerie, and especially the main Mass Effect song. I think it's the one that probably plays on the menu screen, right?
Yeah.
Whatever that main one is,
You can edit it
like,
in.
yeah, no, I should I should do that. It's like nothing you've ever heard before. It's like it's alien, and I know that sounds kind of funny considering the game and the context and everything, but like it really is like one of the most unusual soundtracks that I've ever heard.
Yeah, it's great.
Let me
right,
let me add
go ahead.
one thing. It's a great send off. If it's our last thing that we say, it's a little bit of lore about Mass Effect that I don't remember how I know it, but it's really awesome. The way it goes is humans discovered the first relay orbiting Pluto. That was what the first relay is on Earth. And we thought originally, and we still think that like today in real life, there's a little planet there called Charon or Charon.
Chiron.
Yeah, And that in the mythology, in Greek or Roman, I forgot which, that's the boatman that takes you to Hades.
Oh.
And then it turns out in Mass Effect that boatman actually is a relay, which takes you to the Citadel. And then Cerberus is the dog that guards the gates to Hades. So the humans formed Cerberus, which is the human first, foundation to guard us against the aliens. So they guard the gateway to Earth, to and from Earth. So it's very it's a cool wrap up to the whole mythology of things, and they actually paid a lot of attention to that kind of stuff. It's crazy.
That's great. That's what makes something go from great into special territory. That they took the extra time to come up with that kind of deep level backstory. I had no idea. That's really fun to think about.
And the alternative to something like that is the Brother Moons from Dead Space 3, which is the most dumbest crap in the whole world.
Yeah, all the EA games. That's all we talk about on this podcast are Electronic Arts games. Maybe the only ones that make games anymore.
They make it. Yeah, they make every game. We can't avoid them.
All right, so we're gonna wrap up. Anybody have any other points to make?
Better not. We better not.
Just a quick little housekeeping. The YouTube video on our last podcast was messed up. We are working to fix it. So watch the first 43 minutes and wait with great suspense for the second half of the Star Wars episode. I am killagreg. You can find me at killagreg17.
I'm Dan. You can find me at the Polygon1.
And I'm Alex. Find me at Lex Krasny.
You can find us at Player2, PLAYRTWO.
And you can find us at player2pressstart.com.
That's right.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah,
Sure.
Of course. You're welcome anytime.
Just
now, Alex is going to join us again, and we are going to do Mass Effect 2. What's up, Dan?
Sorry, I was going to say the same thing. We were just talking at the same time.
Oh, all right. It's difficult. This is our first full-on Skype cast.
Yeah.
So we're working out the kinks. Thank you for listening, and we will see you in 2 weeks.
Look, I look forward to it, and I hope everyone else does too. All right.
Good job, guys.
Thank you, Alex.